In the picturesque town of Braunau, nestled on the border between Austria and Germany, a child was born on April 20, 1889. This child would grow up to become one of the most infamous figures in history, Adolf Hitler. However, his journey began not with infamy, but with a series of events that would shape his life in ways he could never have imagined. Adolf was the fourth of 6 children born to Alois and Clara Hitler. His early years were unremarkable, but as the Hitler family expanded, so did the challenges they faced. Tragedy struck when Adolf was just 6 years old. His younger brother, Edmund, succumbed to a bout of measles. This loss left a deep scar on the young Adolf and created a powerful bond between him and his mother, Clara. Alois Hitler, Adolf's father, was a stern and volatile man. He worked as a customs official and had high expectations for his son. The relationship between father and son was often strained, as Adolf's interests diverged from his father's plans. Adolf showed an early talent for drawing and painting, a passion encouraged by his mother. Clara recognized her son's artistic inclinations and did her best to nurture his talents. Yet, despite his artistic promise, Adolf faced opposition from his father, who had more practical ambitions for his son's future. As Adolf grew older, he attended a Catholic elementary school in nearby Fischlham, Austria. Later, he moved to a more advanced Realschule in Linz. In school, his performance was a mix of brilliance and indifference. He excelled in some subjects, but showed little interest in others. The one consistent passion in his life was art. However, as he entered adolescence, tensions between Adolf and his father grew. Alois wanted his son to pursue a stable and respectable career, not the uncertain path of an artist. In response, Adolf's academic performance declined, and at the age of 16, he took a pivotal step that would alter the course of his life forever. He dropped out of school. Adolf's departure from formal education marked the beginning of a period of restlessness and uncertainty. Little did anyone know that this young man, who had experienced the ordinary trials and tribulations of youth, would go on to shape the destiny of nations in the years to come. Hitler's experiences during World War I played a significant role in shaping his political beliefs and ambitions. When the war broke out in 1914, Hitler enthusiastically volunteered for service in the German army. He joined the 16th Bavarian Reserve Regiment and was sent to the Western Front. During his time as a soldier, Hitler displayed bravery and was wounded twice. He received the Iron Cross, both first and second class, for his service. However, his experiences in the trenches of World War I had a profound impact on him. He saw firsthand the horrors of war, including the loss of comrades and the destruction of battlefields. Hitler's nationalist and anti-Semitic sentiments began to take root during this period. He believed that Germany had been betrayed by politicians and Jews, leading to its defeat in the war. These ideas would form the basis of his future political ideology. It was also during this time that he first came into contact with the German Workers' Party, a small nationalist and anti-Semitic political group in Munich. After the war ended in 1918 with Germany's defeat, Hitler returned to Munich. The country was in a state of turmoil, with economic hardship, political instability, and social unrest. Hitler, like many other disaffected veterans, felt a sense of bitterness and anger at the post-war situation. In 1919, he officially joined the DAP, which later became the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party. Hitler's powerful oratory skills and charisma quickly made him one of the party's key figures. He began delivering passionate speeches at party meetings, railing against the Treaty of Versailles, which imposed harsh penalties on Germany, and promoting his vision of a racially pure and powerful German state. This period marked the beginning of Hitler's political career, as he rose through the ranks of the Nazi Party. He formed alliances with other groups extensively to spread his ideas. Hitler's ability to tap into the grievances of a population disillusioned by defeat and economic hardship would eventually propel him to the highest echelons of power in Germany. The experiences and radicalization of Adolf Hitler during World War I and the tumultuous post-war years set the stage for his ascent to power in Germany and the devastating events that would follow. His time in the trenches and the political turmoil of the era deeply influenced his worldview and the direction he would take in his pursuit of political dominance. The year was 1923, and Germany was in turmoil. The aftermath of World War I had left the country in economic ruins, and the Weimar Republic was struggling to maintain control. In this chaotic environment, Adolf Hitler saw an opportunity to seize power. Hitler had been a member of the German Workers' Party since 1919, and by 1920, the party had been renamed the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazi Party for short. Hitler's fiery speeches and charismatic presence quickly elevated him to a position of leadership within the party. On November 8, 1923, Hitler and his followers hatched a plan to overthrow the Weimar government in what would become known as the Beer Hall Putsch. The plan was audacious. They would march on Munich and stage a coup, hoping to trigger a national revolution. As evening descended on Munich, Hitler and his paramilitary force, the Sturmabteilung, or Brown Shirts, gathered at the Bürgerbraukeller Beer Hall. Hitler and his co-conspirators, including General Erich Ludendorff, devised a plan to seize key government buildings and take control of the city. Their attempt began the following day, on November 9, 1923. Hitler, Ludendorff, and their supporters marched through the streets of Munich, aiming to inspire a broader uprising against the Weimar government. Their ranks swelled as they advanced, and they reached the Odeonsplatz, where a confrontation with the police awaited them. In the ensuing chaos, shots were fired, and the situation quickly spiraled out of control. The Beer Hall Putsch had turned into a violent clash between the Nazis and the police. 4 police officers and 16 Nazis were killed, and Hitler suffered a dislocated shoulder during the melee. Facing overwhelming odds, Hitler and his associates retreated. Their coup had failed, and Hitler was arrested 2 days later, on November 11, 1923. The failed putsch would have a lasting impact on Hitler's strategy. While he had hoped for immediate success, the experience taught him that seizing power in Germany would require a more patient and calculated approach. During his trial, Hitler used the courtroom as a platform to espouse his nationalist and anti-Semitic beliefs. He was found guilty of treason but received a relatively light sentence of 5 years in prison. His time behind bars allowed him to dictate his autobiography and political manifesto, Mein Kampf, to his loyal follower, Rudolf Hess. The Beer Hall Putsch marked a turning point in Hitler's political career. Although it had failed in the short term, it brought him national attention and solidified his position as the leader of the Nazi Party. Hitler would use the trial and his time in prison to further his political ideology, laying the groundwork for his future rise to power. As Adolf Hitler sat in Landsberg prison, serving his relatively lenient 5-year sentence for his role in the failed Beer Hall Putsch, he was far from defeated. Instead, he used this time to reflect, strategize, and further refine his vision for the future of Germany. Little did anyone know that this period of incarceration would become a stepping stone for his meteoric rise to power. One of the most significant outcomes of Hitler's time in prison was the writing of his autobiography and political manifesto, Mein Kampf, also known as My Struggle. Dictated to his loyal follower, Rudolf Hess, Mein Kampf became a comprehensive exposition of Hitler's views on politics, race, and the future of Germany. In it, he laid out his extremist ideologies, including Aryan supremacy, anti-Semitism, and his vision for Lebensraum through expansionist policies. Published in 1925, Mein Kampf gained a small following initially but would later become a central text for Nazi Party members and sympathizers. It provided an ideological foundation for the party and helped rally supporters behind Hitler's charismatic leadership. While in prison, Hitler realized that seizing power through an armed uprising was not the most viable strategy. Instead, he decided to focus on winning power through legal means. After his release in December 1924, he began rebuilding and reorganizing the Nazi Party. He expanded the party's reach and improved its electoral prospects by utilizing propaganda, holding rallies, and capitalizing on the economic hardships faced by many Germans during the Weimar Republic era. Hitler understood the power of effective communication and utilized mass media, particularly newspapers and radio, to spread his message. The years following his release from prison saw the Nazi Party grow in strength. In the 1928 Reichstag elections, they secured 12 seats. However, it was the Great Depression, which began with the Wall Street crash of 1929 and led to widespread economic suffering in Germany, that created fertile ground for extremist parties like the Nazis. In the 1930 Reichstag elections, the Nazis surged to 18.3% of the vote, becoming the second largest party in the Reichstag. Despite this success, they still did not have an outright majority. Hitler, realizing the necessity of alliances, made a tactical move by supporting the appointment of conservative Franz von Papen as Chancellor. However, Papen's tenure was short-lived and marked by political instability. His successor, General Kurt von Schleicher, was also unable to stabilize the government. With the political situation deteriorating, President Paul von Hindenburg, fearing the rise of communism, reluctantly appointed Hitler as Chancellor of Germany on January 30, 1933. Hitler's appointment as Chancellor was not the end of his quest for power. In February 1933, just a month after becoming Chancellor, the Reichstag building in Berlin was set ablaze in what some believed to be an act of arson. Hitler seized upon the incident to push for the Reichstag fire decree, which suspended civil liberties, effectively silencing political opposition. With the passage of the Reichstag fire decree, Hitler paved the way for the March 1933 elections. Through a combination of propaganda, intimidation, and the suppression of opposition, the Nazis won 43.9% of the vote. Hitler quickly moved to consolidate his power by convincing the Reichstag to pass the Enabling Act, which granted him the authority to enact laws without parliamentary approval. This marked the end of the Weimar Republic and the beginning of Hitler's absolute rule. With the Enabling Act in place, Hitler wasted no time in dismantling democratic institutions and consolidating his authority. The Nazi regime rapidly transformed Germany into a totalitarian state, suppressing dissent, censoring media, and persecuting political opponents and minority groups. Hitler's rise to power was now complete, and he began implementing his radical agenda, including anti-Semitic policies, rearmament, and territorial expansion. The world would soon witness the devastating consequences of Hitler's unchecked power, as his aggressive foreign policies would lead to the outbreak of World War II in 1939. We have seen how Adolf Hitler, from a prison cell, meticulously plotted his return to politics, leveraged the economic hardships of the Great Depression, and ultimately ascended to the highest office in Germany. His rise to power would have catastrophic consequences for the world, as he pursued his expansionist and genocidal ambitions on an unprecedented scale. Hitler's appointment as Chancellor in 1933 marked the beginning of a dark chapter in world history. Over the next several years, he would methodically consolidate his power, suppress dissent, and pursue an aggressive foreign policy that would lead to the outbreak of World War II. This chapter explores how Hitler solidified his control over Germany and laid the groundwork for his expansionist ambitions. With the Enabling Act in place, Hitler swiftly moved to eliminate all potential sources of opposition. The Nazi regime launched a campaign of political repression, targeting communists, socialists, trade unionists, and other perceived enemies of the state. The infamous SS and Gestapo played crucial roles in the systematic suppression of dissent. One of the most significant events during this period was the Night of the Long Knives in June 1934. Hitler ordered the purge of the Sturmabteilung, a paramilitary organization that had become a potential rival power center within the Nazi Party. Key SA leaders, including Ernst Röhm, were executed, consolidating Hitler's control over the party and the government. In 1933, the Reichstag fire and the subsequent Reichstag fire decree had already provided Hitler with the legal means to suppress political opposition. However, as he aimed to secure his power further, he sought to consolidate power at the state level. In 1934, Hitler pressured German President Paul von Hindenburg to merge the roles of President and Chancellor, effectively making him the Führer of Germany. Hindenburg's death later that year removed one of the last remaining checks on Hitler's authority. Hitler recognized the importance of controlling the narrative and shaping public opinion. His regime launched an extensive propaganda machine under the guidance of Joseph Goebbels. Propaganda films, radio broadcasts, posters, and rallies saturated German society with Nazi ideology. The Hitler Youth and League of German Girls were used to indoctrinate young Germans with Nazi beliefs from an early age. To consolidate power and boost Germany's economy, Hitler implemented a series of economic policies. The regime pursued public works projects, infrastructure development, and job creation, which reduced unemployment and garnered support among the German populace. Simultaneously, the Nazis stifled workers' rights and suppressed labor unions, ensuring that workers had little bargaining power. One of Hitler's central goals was the rearmament of Germany. He openly violated the Treaty of Versailles by expanding the size and capabilities of the German military. This military buildup would play a crucial role in his future territorial ambitions. Hitler's regime implemented a series of discriminatory laws and policies against minority groups, with a particular focus on Jews. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 stripped German Jews of their citizenship and prohibited marriage or sexual relations between Jews and non-Jews. This marked the beginning of systematic anti-Semitic persecution. The regime also targeted other minority groups, including Romani people, disabled individuals, and political dissidents. The horrors of the concentration and extermination camps, such as Auschwitz and Sobibor, were yet to come, but the groundwork for these atrocities had been laid. Hitler's foreign policy aimed at revising the post-World War I settlement. His territorial ambitions were clear, starting with the remilitarization of the Rhineland in 1936. This bold move went unopposed by France and Britain, emboldening Hitler further. The Anschluss, or annexation, of Austria in 1938 brought Austria into the German Reich. Hitler then set his sights on the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia with a significant ethnic German population. The Munich Agreement of 1938 allowed Hitler to annex the Sudetenland without facing military intervention from France or Britain. Hitler's expansionist ambitions were not satisfied with the Sudetenland. In 1939, he pressed further, demanding the Polish city of Danzig and access through the Polish corridor. When Poland refused, Hitler ordered the invasion of Poland on September 1, 1939, triggering World War II. As Hitler consolidated his power at home and expanded his territory abroad, the world would soon bear witness to the devastating consequences of his actions. World War II would bring destruction, suffering, and loss on an unprecedented scale, and Adolf Hitler's consolidation of power in the years leading up to the war played a pivotal role in shaping this tragic chapter in human history. The outbreak of World War II in 1939 marked a catastrophic turning point in global history. Adolf Hitler's aggressive expansionist policies, militarization, and alliances with Axis powers plunged the world into a conflict of unprecedented scale and devastation. This chapter delves into the key events and developments during World War II, including Hitler's leadership, military campaigns, and the Holocaust. On September 1, 1939, Hitler's Germany launched a brutal surprise invasion of Poland, using a military strategy known as Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War. This swift and overwhelming attack, involving tanks, infantry, and air support, left Poland defenseless. Within weeks, both Germany and the Soviet Union occupied Poland, dividing it along the agreed-upon demarcation line. Following the conquest of Poland, a period known as the Phony War ensued. During this time, little military action occurred on the Western Front, as France and Britain were slow to respond to the rapidly changing situation. Hitler used this lull in fighting to rearm and plan future campaigns. In May 1940, German forces unleashed a blitzkrieg against France and the Low Countries. The Germans rapidly advanced through Belgium, encircling and trapping British and French troops at Dunkirk. In a remarkable evacuation known as the Miracle of Dunkirk, hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers were rescued by a flotilla of ships. By June, German forces had occupied Paris, forcing the French to surrender. France's fall shocked the world and left Britain as the last remaining major opponent of Nazi Germany. After the fall of France, Hitler turned his attention to Britain. The Battle of Britain began in July 1940, as the German Luftwaffe launched a sustained bombing campaign against British cities and airfields. Despite heavy civilian and military casualties, the Royal Air Force successfully defended Britain against the Luftwaffe, forcing Hitler to postpone the planned invasion, codenamed Operation Sea Lion. In a shocking breach of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, Hitler ordered the invasion of the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941. Operation Barbarossa was a massive offensive, with millions of German troops attacking along a vast front. Initially, the Germans made significant gains, but the brutal Russian winter and the Soviet Union's vast resources would eventually turn the tide of the war. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, brought the United States into the war. Hitler declared war on the U.S. a few days later. The entry of the U.S. and its vast resources into the conflict had a profound impact on the Allies' ability to wage war against the Axis powers. Concurrently with the military campaigns, Hitler's regime embarked on a systematic campaign of genocide, known as the Holocaust. Millions of Jews, along with Romani people, disabled individuals, and other targeted groups, were rounded up, transported to concentration and extermination camps, and systematically murdered. The horrors of Auschwitz, Sobibor, and Treblinka, among others, remain a symbol of the darkest depths of human cruelty. The Battle of Stalingrad, from August 1942 to February 1943, was one of the deadliest battles in history. The Soviet Union successfully defended the city, leading to a devastating defeat for the German army. This marked a turning point in the war, as it demonstrated that the German advance could be halted and reversed. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces launched the largest amphibious invasion in history, known as D-Day, landing in Normandy, France. This operation opened a new front in Western Europe and eventually led to the liberation of France from Nazi occupation. As Allied forces advanced from both the east and west, Germany's defeat became inevitable. Hitler's leadership grew increasingly erratic, and he retreated into his bunker in Berlin. In April 1945, with Berlin surrounded by Soviet forces, Hitler and some of his inner circle committed suicide. On May 7, 1945, Germany unconditionally surrendered to the Allies, officially ending World War II in Europe. The aftermath of the war saw the Nuremberg trials, where Nazi leaders were prosecuted for war crimes and crimes against humanity. The global devastation of World War II, which claimed tens of millions of lives, reshaped the world order and gave rise to the Cold War. Adolf Hitler's leadership during this period left an indelible mark on history, as the horrors of his regime, including the Holocaust, serve as a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked power and hatred. As 1945 unfolded, Adolf Hitler's dreams of a thousand-year Reich lay in ruins. The Nazi war machine had crumbled under the relentless assault of Allied forces from the west and the inexorable advance of the Red Army from the east. This chapter explores the final days of Hitler's life, the fall of Berlin, and the end of World War II in Europe. As Allied forces closed in on Berlin from both sides, Hitler's determination to resist remained unshaken. The Battle of Berlin, marked by brutal urban warfare, raged on the streets of the German capital. Hitler's bunker, deep beneath the Chancellery building, became his last refuge. In the claustrophobic confines of the bunker, Hitler's mental and physical health deteriorated rapidly. He displayed signs of paranoia, delusion, and despondency. His inner circle, including Eva Braun, Joseph Goebbels, and other loyalists, remained with him to the end. On April 29, 1945, Eva Braun and Adolf Hitler were married in a brief ceremony within the bunker. The next day, as Soviet forces closed in, the couple took their own lives. Hitler ingested cyanide, while Eva Braun swallowed poison. Their bodies were carried outside, doused in petrol, and set ablaze in the Chancellery garden. With Berlin's fall imminent, Grand Admiral Karl Donitz assumed the presidency of Germany after Hitler's death. On May 7, 1945, in the French city of Reims, General Alfred Jodl signed the unconditional surrender of all German forces, officially ending the war in Europe. The surrender took effect on May 8, which became known as Victory in Europe Day. The aftermath of World War II in Europe was marked by devastation and reconstruction. Nazi leaders and war criminals were apprehended and brought to justice at the Nuremberg trials. Germany was divided into occupation zones controlled by the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and the Soviet Union. Adolf Hitler's legacy is one of infamy and horror. His leadership led to the deaths of millions, including the genocide of 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. The ruins of Europe, the profound suffering, and the lessons learned from the war shaped the post-war world. The horrors of Hitler's regime serve as a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked power, totalitarianism, and hatred. In the end, Hitler's vision of a Nazi-dominated world collapsed in ruins, and his death marked the symbolic end of an era defined by brutality, aggression, and a quest for racial purity. While the world celebrated the defeat of Nazi Germany, the scars of World War II would endure for generations, reminding humanity of the importance of peace, tolerance, and the preservation of democracy. While Hitler's life may have ended in a bunker in Berlin in 1945, but the impact of his actions and ideology continues to reverberate through history. We will be examining how the world grappled with the aftermath of World War II and the lessons learned from the Holocaust. In the immediate aftermath of World War II, the Allied powers held the Nuremberg trials to prosecute major war criminals. 24 prominent Nazis, including Hermann Göring and Rudolf Hess, faced charges of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. The trials established the principle that individuals, including heads of state, could be held accountable for international crimes. Germany underwent a process of denazification, aimed at removing all traces of Nazi ideology from its institutions and society. Former Nazis were purged from positions of power, and educational programs sought to promote democratic values and tolerance. This effort aimed to prevent the resurgence of extremist ideologies. At the end of World War II, Germany was divided into 4 occupation zones controlled by the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and the Soviet Union. This division ultimately led to the Cold War and the establishment of East and West Germany. The division lasted until the reunification of Germany in 1990. World War II and the Holocaust played a pivotal role in shaping the United Nations and the development of international law. The UN Charter, signed in 1945, sought to prevent future conflicts and promote human rights. Genocide, as exemplified by the Holocaust, became a crime under international law. The Holocaust stands as one of the darkest chapters in human history. Holocaust survivors, activists, and governments around the world have worked to ensure that the memory of the Holocaust is preserved and that the phrase, "never again," holds true. Holocaust memorials, museums, and educational programs serve as reminders of the need to combat hatred and intolerance. Adolf Hitler's rise to power and the horrors of Nazi Germany serve as a stark warning about the dangers of totalitarianism, propaganda, and unchecked power. The Holocaust is a testament to the depths of human cruelty and the consequences of discrimination based on race, religion, and ethnicity. Hitler's name is synonymous with evil, and his actions continue to be a subject of intense study and debate. Historians, psychologists, and scholars have sought to understand the factors that allowed Hitler to rise to power and how he manipulated a nation. The lessons learned from Hitler's reign remain relevant today. They underscore the importance of defending democracy, upholding human rights, and promoting tolerance in the face of extremist ideologies. The echoes of the past serve as a warning to future generations about the consequences of apathy and intolerance. Decades after World War II, efforts to bring Nazi war criminals to justice continue. Nazi hunters and organizations dedicated to pursuing justice have played a crucial role in holding those responsible for war crimes accountable for their actions.